Good Thursday morning. This is an interesting text from Galatians. This is the third chapter. He is really mad. He must have been writing and getting madder by the second he was writing this thing. And he's got a good. I'm going to apply it to our whatever. I'll show it to you. He says, "Oh, stupid Galatians." He calls them names. Who has bewitched you? Before whose eyes Jesus Christ was publicly portrayed as crucified. How could you ever have lost sight of the crucified Christ? That's what he said. What's the matter with you? This was Robert De Niro. He'd say, what's the matter with you? I want to learn only this from you. Did you receive the Spirit from works of the law or from faith in what you heard? The preaching of the gospel. Where'd you get your faith from? Fulfilling the law? Remember, these are Gentiles, okay? Forgot about it. Are you so stupid? What's the matter with you? After beginning with the Spirit, are you now ending with the flesh? For St. Paul, the flesh is the law, okay? Yeah? Did you experience so many things in vain, if indeed it was in vain? From the gospel, was that vain? Does then the one who supplies the Spirit to you and works mighty deeds among you do so from works of the law or from faith in what you heard? Right? Where'd you get your faith from, fellas? What's the matter with you? Huh? You didn't get it from the fulfillment of the law. You're not even under the law. You got it from the preaching of the gospel, his, but also the others, Barnabas and the others, you see. It is interesting. I'll give you my 3.5 cents worth if that's all it's worth. And sometimes I think it's all it's worth. I wonder, even for ourselves, even though I historically can understand it even culturally, how did we ever descend as Catholics? How do we ever descend into such a juridic spirituality that many of us who are old grew up with? You young people, if you're anybody's young here, if you're older than 50, you're going to understand what I'm saying. If you're younger, probably not, okay? But how we were so governed, as it were, in our spirituality and in our daily lives as Catholics by the juridic nature of the church, her canon law. And almost every aspect was governed by canonical rules, including even the moral order. Our lives were so governed. And in one way, I think it was a result of the evolution of the recovery of the church from the 19th century. She had to put order in the church because the church must have been really chaotic. And so one way is the structure of law, and who enforces law? Canon lawyers, obviously, church lawyers. And they were right. But it also, I think, because there was almost no deep theological foundations actually preached by the church, preached by the active church, the parochial church, whatever you want to call it. I think there was piety without substance, without theological substance. There was a need of recovery of both theology and structure in the life of the church, and a recovery of the sacraments. We had really descended. The church must have been in disarray throughout the modern period. Modern meaning from the Middle Age, post-Middle Ages, till the modern period came to an end, until almost virtually the 20th century. Certainly the 19th was the beginning of the First Vatican Council, was the recovery of the church, was its recovery. And it had to rebuild itself spiritually, had to recover itself pastorally in its preaching. We had to recover the practice of the sacraments. They weren't practiced anymore. People went to church very, very rarely and never went to communion. That's where so many of our pieties came from. There were a dime a dozen, literally. And the pieties replaced the sacraments. You still see remnants of it, not among the young, but among the old. So during Mass, somebody would be saying the rosary instead of participating in the liturgy. That would be my generation and older. That would have been common. We'd be saying all kinds of prayers, but we wouldn't be praying with the church. We would be praying, that was background music. And in many instances, no one ever went to communion. I'm talking a long time ago. I mean, before my time. But then again, as she began to restore the sacraments, one of the most important sacraments, both for moral teaching, but also in preparation for the Eucharist, was the sacrament of penance, confession. But that was also canonically construed and executed. We were taught how to hear confessions by canon lawyers. And so there's where your structure came from. When was the last time And when you're opening prayer, it's been 2 weeks from my last confession, and the enumeration, first of your mortal sins, which the church clearly defined by juridic, what do I want to call it? Canonically, by rules. What rules did you break? What did you do? How was it a serious thing, or was it just venial? See? And then we define what was a mortal sin. Very often was categorized. And it ran from everything from horrific evils, horrific moral evils, to trivia. Missing Mass on Sunday was considered a mortal sin. It was a mortal sin. Think about it. We just came out of the genocidal period of the Second World War, where millions and millions of people, men, women, and children, were gassed to death. Horrific moral evil beyond imagination. And we're saying you're going to go to hell for missing Sunday, or if you got into church too late. Think about it. The church maybe earlier needed to structure, but how could anybody in the 50s take that seriously? And yet we did. We bought it hook, line, and sinker. We had lines of confession every Saturday. You'd have 20 deep waiting to go to confession, and often to confess things such as missing Mass, cursing, saying bad words. I still laugh about that. I laugh about saying bad words. I went to confession one time. I was a kid. I was at 13, 14, 15. I don't know what the hell I was. But anyway, I went to confession. Did I tell you this story in the Italian parish? Got out, and as I was walking home, some guy splashed from his car. He yelled out, "You son of a bitch, what are you..." Well, right back in the confession. Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. Been 1 minute since my last confession. I just called the guy, son of a bitch. "You're so weak," he said to me. I can never forget the guy. "You're so weak." No, I wasn't. The guy got sprayed on me. You know what? Today, if a guy came to confession and said that to me, I'd say, "Oh, son, no big deal. No big deal. Not in the world of real moral issues. Not when you're trivializing your conscience. And don't let anybody trivialize your conscience that way. There are great issues. There are great questions. Not that you keep your nose clean. Will you take your family? Not that you've never done anything wrong. Did you do anything right? Were you generous with your spouse? Did you put her first, him first? Did you go out with your kids, and did you go out and play with your kids? Not that you brought home the paycheck and you never lied and you never cheated on your spouse, but did you love them actively? No canon lawyer can tell you that. There are no rules to that. There's only the gospel of love. That's what I got out of St. Paul. That transformed my life. I'll never forget it, because I was just in the beginning of my seminary year. It's just before novitiate. I read Christ the Life of the Soul. I told you that yesterday. And I stopped being afraid of God. I stopped being afraid. I don't think I ever went to confession again and said I said a bad word. See, I knew the real issues were. Am I faithful to my vocation? Have I lived at least marginally, reasonably, actively well my passionate vocation? Have I lived it well? Have I responded to grace well, or have I failed? Or have I failed, actually failed? Okay? But I'm not going to worry about whether I cuss once in a while. I'm not going to trivialize the great drama of life. But I'm going to ask myself when I go into confessional, have I been faithful, actively faithful to what I've been called to be? It's not canon law. It's the calling of Christ to live faithfully to the mission we have been called to. For most of you, to be good spouses and parents, grandparents, professional workers, laborers, to be faithful to the moments of grace that we're called to. See? I believe that. That's St. Paul. That's St. Paul. Yeah. That's the truth. Yeah.